Good morning. Well, we're going to get the show on the road here. My name is Wayne Tormala. I'm a bureau chief here with the Arizona Department of Health, and we just can't be happier with the turnout we have. And the freeways were a little jammed, so we gave ourselves a few extra minutes here to get started. But I just want to thank all of you for making the time and effort to get here, especially for those who have come from afar. Some of you have taken planes, some of you have taken overnight stays to be here on time, and we really appreciate that. We got a full agenda. We got wall-to-wall speakers today, and we've got breakout sessions in the afternoon, and we're going to try to allow each time for each speaker to have some Q&A. And you're going to have cards on your tables. If you have questions, you can put them up, and we're going to collect them even during presentations, and so we can be real efficient about getting all the questions that we can out. As well as the afternoon breakouts, you're going to get a chance to choose your breakout and get to know better the speakers that you've heard this morning and early afternoon, and get a time to ask questions. And you can rotate or you can stay in one breakout, and we'll talk more about that in the afternoon. But again, we're so happy that you're here. I want to do a couple quick thank yous for people that made this possible. First of all, Lori Thomas, if you could stand right up in front here. She was our point person. Give her a round of applause. Lori works right outside my office, and so about every 10 minutes, especially in the last couple of weeks, she's coming in and saying, "Oh, I got one more thing here, one more thing." She apologized last night, but there was no need because this is going to be a great event. So thank you, Lori. We also have our planning committee, and I want to recognize Susan Hagel. Susan, can you stand up, please? There she is. Susan Hagel from Cochise County. And Ken Walker from Pima Prevention Partnership. Ken, over here. And we also have Leanne Anderson. Leanne, where are you? Right here from La Paz County. And then finally, we have Sharon Hosfeld, and Sharon's here somewhere. Sharon, can you stand up way back in the corner? Sharon's with the Arizona Multi-Housing Association. Been a great partner with a lot of us in helping get smoke-free housing and multi-housing environments across Arizona. And the CEO of Arizona Multi-Housing is going to be our lunchtime speaker, Tom Simplot. He'll be joining us later. So we started a few minutes late because of traffic, so I'm going to get right to the point here and start the show going with our first speakers. Before they come up here, I just want to say that Madonna and Sharlene Bozack are both what they would say. Matt says he's just a guy, but he's a retired CEO of the American Cancer Society here in the Southwest. And Sharlene Bozack was executive of government relations across, I think, 12 western states with the American Cancer Society. But even more importantly, I think, to those of us in the room and across Arizona, they were really among the pioneers, among many other people, that really brought tobacco control to its forefront here in Arizona. And they're going to talk about, as you can see on the slide, where we've been 2 decades of success, and I know we're going to end that with celebrating our successes that we've had just in the past year in 2016. But I think quite honestly, a lot of us wouldn't be here if it weren't for Matt and Sharlene, because when you talk about smoke-free laws, you talk about tobacco tax in Arizona, the kind of things that really lifted all ships on tobacco control for prevention, cessation, and secondhand smoke, as well as the fact that we have voter-protected funds here in Arizona. And that's really, it's been probably the most important ingredient in the continued work of all of us in the room and those who couldn't be here, and the continued success where hundreds of thousands of Arizonans have quit smoking and achieved longer, more productive, and higher quality of living because of this. Many states have had their tobacco budgets robbed in times of recession and in times of other kinds of political misgivings, I think. So we've been able to stand strong over the years, but only because we have voter-protected funds. When someone buys a pack of cigarettes, we get some of that state tax that goes into all of our work. And if it weren't for the voter protection, I think I could say with some confidence we probably wouldn't have our budget today. So with that in mind, good friends of mine and soon to be good friends of yours. If you haven't met them, I want to introduce Madonna and Sharlene Bozack.
Good morning, Arizona and beyond. I'm assured by Wayne that when he says we have wall-to-wall speakers, he was not referring to my girth. Is that true? Is that true, Charlene? That was happening. Charlene and I have history. We've been together since 2000, both working for the American Cancer Society and both very active and involved in the tobacco prevention, education, advocacy, and all of that sort of thing. But I want to talk about where we have been. Theme today in my mind is where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And I got the short straw, and I am trying to push a button. Okay, so I drew the short straw. I'm doing ancient history. But we're going to talk about ancient history. We're going to talk about modern history. We're talking about change in the climate in Arizona and how it evolved over the last 2+ decades. And we're talking about how we protected the money that we originally got, and then how we moved beyond taxes into other advocacy activities, and we came to clean air. And then we had a new partner come to the table. And we'll talk about all of those things as we move forward, maybe. Okay, I said, I got in charge of HR. I'm like the old GTO. It's parked in the garage, covered, and then every once in a while they pull me out, dust me off, put me on a stage in front of a screen, and I get to talk about ancient history. As a matter of fact, take a brief commercial break about ancient history. I want to acknowledge someone who shares my ancient history in terms of the tobacco movement. And I want to introduce, reintroduce, recognize, and thank Dr. Lee Fairbanks, who I talked about as being the godfather of the tobacco prevention movement in Arizona. Lee, stand up, stand up. Thank you very much for all that you have done and all you continue to do. Another person that I'd like to talk about briefly, because you're going to hear a lot more from and about him later, is Dr. Schroeder. And the reason I bring him up now is because this presentation started out as a flip chart presentation in the mid-90s. Arizona was one of about 15 or 18 states funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation called Smokeless States. And so that helped us do many things that we're going to reference in this PowerPoint presentation. But I and a fellow named Tom Keene from Colorado were invited to New Jersey after our campaigns of '94 to brief and update the senior staff at RWJ. So he was there for the birth of this presentation and for all that he's done in the tobacco prevention and education movement all over this country, but especially in Arizona. I want to recognize and thank you, Dr. Schroeder. So ancient history starts in, we have 94 up here, but really it was 93 because that's when we first came together and began to plan what became the tobacco tax increase of 1994. It was a 40-cent increase in the cost of tobacco in the state. Then that was followed by what our then lobbyist, and I'll talk a little bit more about him later, called nuclear winter, and that happened between the legislative sessions of 95, 96, and 97. And then there was the struggle to build a strong administration and leadership group at the Department of Health Services to guide and lead and direct this effort of the revenue generated. And finally, there was the Clean Indoor Air activity and where that all came to. So, first, the Tobacco Tax Initiative. I want to recognize the Arizona Hospital and Healthcare Association, and in particular, John Rivers, who was the CEO and president at the time of AZHHA. He is the man who had the foresight and the enlightened self-interest, a term that I learned way back then, to bring the concept of a tobacco tax increase to Arizona. It had been done first in California and Massachusetts, and we were the third state, again with help from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. But the partnership was the Hospital Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Lung Association, American Heart Association. And the funds were sequestered for use in healthcare and in tobacco education and prevention. So those funds, again, protected a little later, but they are what have made possible the last over 2 decades of success that we've had in controlling tobacco consumption in this state. Another interesting factor, the honorary chair of that campaign was Barry Goldwater. Who better to lead a tobacco tax initiative in Arizona than the man who is the reputed conservative leader of the country at one time? And so Barry brought credibility and he brought balance to what those liberals out there were trying to do in raising the tax. And by the way, ALA, AHA, and ACS were very naive. We were do-gooders. Everybody had to like us. And so we came into this campaign with little or no experience in the tobacco arena or in the political arena. And in 3 or 4 years, we became political animals, and we built a very strong grassroots effort that on occasion had to close down the Capitol and did when we needed to do that. Tobacco industry in 1994 was very strong. And we were the black hats. The political community, the lobby community, the business community, you name it, they didn't like us. We were the black hats. We were threatened by the governor and the president of the Senate. We were invited to the 9th floor for a meeting with the governor, showed up, Heart, Cancer, Lung Hospital Association, to find the governor and the president of the Senate and several of Governor Symington's staff, who proceeded to tell us in no uncertain terms that if we didn't stop this immediately, we were going to face consequences like we couldn't imagine. And they made threats. And we didn't stop. As a matter of fact, not only did we not stop, that meeting was on the front page of the newspaper the next day. One person who was not at that meeting, and this was critical, was Assemblyman Congressman Killian, who was the Speaker of the House. And he came back over and over and over again to help us, especially during the early years when we were still gaining traction and gaining knowledge and experience in advocacy. In that campaign, we were outspent 4-1, and we won with the slimmest of margins, less than 1%. As a matter of fact, I learned a lot during that period of time. I learned that there is no such thing as truth in advertising when it comes to political campaigns, and I learned that, or I experienced the fact that if that campaign had gone one more week with all of the lies, half-truths, and innuendo that were being spread by the opposition, we probably wouldn't have won that campaign, and that was just political reality at the time. But the fact is, we did win that campaign. And then followed up, after 1 or 2 days of celebration, we found ourselves in the middle of nuclear winter, and that was the phrase that was coined by our then and still current lobbyist, Kevin DeMena, who a lot of you may know here in Arizona. But what happened was all of the threats that the governor and the president of the Senate, by the way, John Green was the president of the Senate at the time, all of the threats that they threw out there in that meeting on the 9th floor, they tried to do. They tried to slow down the reimbursement efforts, or the reimbursements that the state usually paid to hospitals for uncompensated care and all that sort of thing. There was a bill in the legislature to try and control the salaries of 501c3 executives. The media was out there. I was, those of you who are familiar with the Phoenix area publication that I prefer to call the New Slime, I was a cover story in that publication after the campaign. So the media, everybody was out to get revenge and tried to get this reversed, tried to get it controlled, tried to get it thrown out, did everything they possibly could to discredit the sponsors and undermine what we had gotten approved by the voters. So there were 3 years of preemption battles and attempts to undermine and overturn the tax. But things like Senator Goldwater going down to the legislature and waving his finger at committees and saying, you cannot overturn the will of the people. The people voted for this, and they deserve to have what they voted for. And Speaker Killian, over that 3-year period, while, again, we were building a grassroots network, he also was very instrumental in blocking legislation that would have tried to overturn this. Because another thing was, and you'll hear about this a little bit later, we didn't have voter-protected initiatives back then. So things like the Heritage Fund and some of those kind of things, when the government wanted those funds, they just took them. And there was no protection. There was also, at that period of time, the struggle to build what we called at the time Tobacco Education and Prevention Program, which has morphed into the Bureau of Tobacco and Chronic Disease. I think that's now the right name. It could be a different name. I don't know. I slept since that. Anyway. And they had an oversight group called TUPAC, Tobacco Use Prevention Advisory Committee, which was conflicted from day one. It had smoking legislators on it. It had liquor distributors on it. It had all kinds of people that had no interest in protecting the state from tobacco, the ravages of tobacco use. So that was conflicted, and the governor, because again, he supervised the person who was the head of the Department of Health Services at that time, did things like limiting how much we could spend, which built up a huge, over a 3 or 4 year time, built up a huge surplus because we weren't allowed to spend all the money. Also limited us to the fact that we could only spend money on programs related to youth and to pregnant women. So what was going on in California, the low-hanging fruit, they were out there really getting people to quit smoking. We were limited to dealing with young people and pregnant women. But in spite of all of that resistance, an award-winning campaign was born. Does anybody remember tumor-causing, teeth-staining, smelly, puking habit? That phrase was a calling card, a cry out to the community, and it was a very, very successful and nationally award-winning campaign funded by tobacco tax revenue. And here is an example of one of the ads that was run during that period.
Tobacco, tumor-causing, teeth-staining, smelly, puking habit.
And if you like that one, you'd, I'm sure, have also liked the one about the dog. The dog, and it wasn't a fire hydrant that he did his thing on, it was a cigarette. But anyway, I digress. So, what happens next? We are now on a roll. We are now funding significant tobacco education and prevention programs. We are having an impact, especially on youth, okay? Then we turned our attention to the next major advocacy issue, and that is clean indoor air. And that actually started with a very, very progressive group of people in Flagstaff who, unbeknownst to us and without our help, went on the ballot and got the first clean indoor air bill at community level passed in Arizona. Then, with help from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Rolling Thunder was born, and it funded an effort on our part to get out into the state and do the same thing that happened in Flagstaff in 10 or 15 other cities and counties throughout the state. So we went to Mesa, where we did it not once, but twice. It was so much fun, we did it twice. Because the people that opposed us put it back on a ballot a second time, and we had to win it twice in Mesa. But we also won it in Tucson and in Pima County and in 10 other communities around the state. And then the strongest language that we had was language that was passed in Tempe, and that language is the language that became the statewide effort to control tobacco use indoors, and it included bars, which is one of the earliest earliest efforts on record to get a complete ban in everything, including bowling alleys and including bars and all that sort of thing. then what happened? Modern history's happened, and that's going to be addressed by the more modern person. You know, we have the ancient history, and now
I'm the modern history.
modern history. I'm going to sit down now.
So, from there to the present, we made a very strong TEP program effective. We also made many friends, not only in the state legislature, but throughout the state of Arizona. But in 2001, a disaster hit. We lost financial support, and the legislature cut everything, including the TEP funds. So, what did the voluntaries do? We decided, no, that's not going to happen. So, we went back to the ballot, and that's where the voter-protected funds came from. And to this day, today, our funds are voter-protected. And the only way they can be changed is with a 2/3 majority. The other thing we did when we went back for the voter protection, we went back for another tobacco tax. And that time we went for $1. So, you know, it all worked together. Instead of being a issue that people did not want to talk about, people wanted to talk about. We became the white hats instead of the black hats, especially the voluntaries. We had a lot of struggles getting there because, as Matt said, the voluntaries, heart, lung, and cancer, we didn't know what, you know, to be really honest, what politics and what they could do to us, but we learned, and we had a grassroots effort, to this day, we have still a very strong grassroots effort. We were out seeing what we were doing. We had ad campaigns that we never had before. We had media outlets were coming to us that wanted us to advertise and talk about interviews. So then we decided that, and I'm going to skip that slide because I only have 1 minute because Matt took so long. We decided that we needed to go back to the ballot, and this time to go back to the ballot for clean indoor air. Very unheard of, especially in the West. And so, but with the voluntaries, with a strong coalition, and again, I can't thank Dr. Fairbanks enough because I swear to God, he collected all the signatures to get us on the ballot. We put it on the ballot, and that year that it went on the ballot, there were quite a few other ballot initiatives. There was also an initiative that sounded like it was a good thing with tobacco, but it really was against us. So we had to really work to educate the public. Again, we were outspent 8-1. And I want to tell you, I've been in a lot of political campaigns, but that campaign, I feel like I learned so much because you don't have to be the one to have the most funds. You have to be the one that has the right message. And our right message was clean indoor air for the state of Arizona, including bars. So, and it passed. It was a narrow victory, but it passed. And out of that came the Trust Commission, which I and Matt sit on. And that is an oversight committee, advisory committee to the Department of Health that we have a very strong working relationship with to keep the funds going and making sure that the right programs are being introduced and getting the money out to the counties and to the tribes so that they can educate the young people to become more active and involved, and you'll hear about STAND later. So it's been for me, in all my years of being in politics, and I have to digress a little bit, even though I know I'm over time. When I was hired on at the American Cancer Society, I came from a very diverse background, and I won't go into that. But I thought, oh, cancer. Who can be against cancer? Who can be against the Cancer Society? I'm going to have, from here on in, I'm going to have it pretty easy. Wrong. I never was before called a Nazi. You know, it was like, it just took me back. But again, it made me a lot stronger, and our side prevailed. So, and the Trust Commission is alive and well. We've gone, go ahead. We are alive and well. Our last tax, the new Chronic Disease Fund, and we provide advice and oversight. And now we have to really watch the economy for new threats, as you all know. And I just got the stop sign, so I have to stop here. Any questions, you can see me afterwards, but let me tell you, the 2006 campaign and the Trust Commission are so near and dear to my heart that it's unbelievable. When I think of Arizona as a leader in the nation for smoke-free, for tobacco tax, we still are in the top 10. Let's talk about where we are now. Skip. Skip. But wait, there's more.
There is more, and it's the final slide. But where are we now? Youth tobacco is at an all-time low, 10%. Adult tobacco use, all-time low, 14%. Youth buy rate, all-time low, 13%. STAND, our statewide youth program, has been designated a best practice by the CDC for engaging youth. 200,000 Arizonans quit tobacco in the last 5 years alone. And in the last 20-plus years, over 20,000 people are alive today because of what we've done. We have saved lives. You have saved lives. Thank
But
you.
where are we going? Last slide. So today, we are here to do a presentations on where we need to be and where we are going. And we've got some initiatives on the books that are very exciting, and I hope that you all will join us in support of what we are doing for the future. Thank you.